Hello. Okay, I think the mic is good. So I took a. I think the mic might be loud. Well, I took AP Psychology my senior year of high school, and it was very disappointing. It was very sad. How are instrumentals so distracting to me? Anyway, I think it's just this song. It's too beautiful though. I can't skip it. Anyway, I took AP Psychology, and the teacher was very chill. She was very laid back, she was one of those cool teachers. And so we had an assignment like twice a month, and the assignment would always be just make a presentation on whatever psychologist or psychological theory you want, do your own research. It's free reign. This is going to be an easy class, guys. AP Psych. I did not like that. I like strict environments. You know, when I went to the high school that I went to, it's like known as this like really good high school, like everybody that is smart goes there. I was expecting strict Rory Gilmore Girls style school. We have essays due every week, We're learning a lot about things I'm interested in. Because I'm a nerd. I freaking love school. I'm doing school right now. And that did not happen. Consequently, I know a little bit about Freud, most of which I know from my own research. I I don't remember if we covered much in the class. I think we did do an overview at some point, just like the id, the ego, and the superego, the basic. But I'm going into this quite blind, and that was my intention. So here we go. B dropped a video and a live stream. Oh my goodness. Yes. I recorded that yesterday. It was really fun to record. I actually did watch the video back, and I thought I was funny, so... let me turn on this camera. Da, da. Okay. Now, I have a little lecture set up for us. I'm gonna keep the music playing.
And even more importantly, a lot of these ideas have critical...
Wait, I need to
influence on how we think about the present.
Beautiful.
Now, for better or worse, we live in a world profoundly affected by sickness. Last class we talked about the brain.
Is it good?
Talk a little bit
yeah, you can see it.
So today and Monday, we're going to talk about two very big ideas. And these ideas are associated with Sigmund Freud and B.F. Skinner and our psychoanalysis and behaviorism. And I want to talk about psychoanalysis today and behaviorism next week. Now, one of the things that makes these theories so interesting is their scope. Most of the work we're going to talk about in this class, most of the ideas are narrow. So we're going to talk about somebody's idea about racial prejudice. But that's not a theory of language acquisition. We'll talk about theories of schizophrenia, but they're not explanations of sexual attractiveness. Most theories are specialized theories. But these two views are grand theories. They're theories of everything, encompassing just about everything that matters. Day-to-day life, child development, mental illness, religion, war, love. Freud and Skinner had explanations of all of these. Now, this is not a history course. I have zero interest in describing historical figures in psychology just for the sake of telling you about the history of the field. What I want to tell you about, though, is I want to talk about these ideas because so much rests on them. And even more importantly, a a lot of these ideas have critical influence on how we think about the present.
Okay, this is kind of off topic, but I swear to God, my mom, she must be a fan of Freud and she doesn't know it because she's constantly saying, like, oh my God, our traumas affect everything that we do. Like, our traumas affect this and that. She's very much into, like, the manifestation spirituality circles, which I have a lot of problem with personally, but shout out to my mom. And I always tell her every time she brings up trauma, I'm like, that's so Freud of you. And she never knows who I'm talking about. But I explained it to her one time, but I think it went in one ear out the other. But yeah, these theories do explain everything. Thank you, lecture bro.
No, sure. Now, for better or worse, we live in a world profoundly affected by Sigmund Freud. If I had to ask
That's
you,
what I'm saying.
name a famous psychologist, the answer mostly would be Freud. He's the most famous psychologist ever, and he's had a profound influence on the 20th and 21st century. Some biographical information: he was born in the 1850s. He spent most of his life in Vienna, Austria, but he died in London, and he escaped from London soon after retreating there at the beginning of World War II, as the Nazis began to occupy where he lived. He's one of the most famous scholars ever, but he's not known for any single
Actually, I
discovery.
think that's pretty important because that affects
Influence
his.
on the 20th and 21st century. Some biographical information: he was born in the 1850s. He spent most of his life in Vienna, Austria, but he died in London, and he escaped from London soon after retreating there at the beginning of World War II, as the Nazis began to occupy where he lived. He's one of the most famous scholars ever, but he's not known for any single discovery. Instead, he's known for the development of an encompassing theory of mind, one that he developed over the span of many decades. He was, in his time, extremely well known, a celebrity, recognized on the street. And throughout his life, he was a man of extraordinary energy and productivity, in part because he was a very serious cocaine addict, but also just in general, he was just a high-energy sort of person. He was
I did not know
in
that.
medicine and in literature, didn't get either one of them. Didn't get the prize in medicine because Albert Einstein, everybody loves Albert Einstein. Well, Albert Einstein really wrote a letter, because they asked for opinions of other Nobel Prizes, wrote a letter saying, don't give the prize to Freud. He doesn't deserve a Nobel Prize, he's just a psychologist. Yeah. Okay. While he's almost universally acclaimed as a profoundly important intellectual figure, he's also the object of considerable dislike. This is in part because of his character. He was not a very nice man in many ways. He was deeply ambitious for the cause of promoting psychoanalysis, for the cause of presenting his views and defending it. And he was often dishonest, extremely brutal to his friends, and terrible to his enemies. He was an interesting character. My favorite Freud story was as he was leaving Europe during the rise of the Nazis, as he was ready to go to England from, I think, either Germany or Austria, he had to sign a letter from the Gestapo. Gestapo agents intercepted him and demanded he sign a letter saying that at no point had he been threatened or harassed by the Gestapo. So he signs the letter, and then he writes underneath it, the Gestapo is not harming me in any way. In fact, I highly recommend the Gestapo to everybody. He had a certain aggression to him. He's also disliked, often hated, because of his views. He was seen as a sexual renegade, out to destroy the conception of people as good and rational and pure beings. And when the Nazis rose to power in the 1930s, he was identified as a Jew who was devoted to destroying the most sacred notions of Christianity. And to some extent, many people see him this way. And to some extent, this accusation has some truth to it. Freud made claims about people that many of us, maybe most of us, would rather not know. Well, okay, what did he say? Well, if you ask somebody who doesn't like Freud what he said, they'll describe some of the stupider things he said. And in fact, Freud said a lot of things, some of which were not very rational. For instance, he's well known for his accounts of phallic symbols, arguing certain architectural monuments are subconsciously developed as
Yeah, I just don't get that focus. Like, that's.
representations. And related to this, he developed a notorious theory of penis envy. And penis envy is an account of a developmental state that every one of you who is female has gone through, according to Freud. And the idea is that you discovered at some point in your development that you lack a penis. This is a catastrophe. And so each of you inferred at that point that you had been castrated. You had once had a penis, but somebody had taken it from you.
All right,
you
bro.
then turned to your father and love your father because your father has a penis. So he's a sort of penis substitute.
It's just what the thing is. He could have taken so many paths to explain attraction to the opposite sex, and he just was like, you want that? What? Why? Like, of all the theories you could have chosen, I don't.
You reject your mother, who's equally unworthy due to her penis lack, and that shapes your psychosexual development. Now, if that's the sort of thing you know about Freud, you're
I
not
feel
wrong.
like I feel like he just genuinely he had a fever dream one day, and he was like, actually, I'm gonna write this down, sell millions of copies, and say that this is the correct view, and now everyone should believe this. I wonder, maybe he's such a menace that like he lied. What if he didn't actually believe it? He's a grifter, grifter in the freaking 1900s.
Of him or of his work. But at the core of Freud's explanation, the more interesting ideas is a set of claims of immense intellectual importance. And the two main ones are this. The two main ones involve the existence of an unconscious motivation, and the notion of unconscious dynamics or unconscious conflict, which lead to mental.
Existence of unconscious with unconscious dynamics leads to mental illness. Uh, I feel like honestly, a lot of the time, mental illness occurs for reasons that the person is aware of. I, I kind of take the Jungian. I believe it's Jungian. I think I've heard people say Jungian. I take the Jungian view that your past traumas don't really matter 90% of the time. What does matter are your current mental structures, your current perspectives, and what is currently harming you. What is currently resulting in thought patterns of anxiety, depression, and all of that. And I feel like going back, like in therapy, if you're in therapy, you're constantly going back, talking about your traumas, kind of just leads to rumination most of the time. Unnecessary rumination. I don't really see how that could be productive if there's not always a focus on the present. Like, that's my main problem with Freud and people being like, oh, well, our traumas control everything in ways we can't consciously control. So, and it also brings in like, this belief that you are kind of at the will of your unconscious mind. And I don't think that's true a lot of the time. I think we get pieces of what our unconscious mind is, and we could use those pieces to kind of like work on whatever is mentally troubling you. Things like intuition, or I just feel like we know ourselves better than Freud thinks.
Illnesses, dreams, slips of the tongue, and so on.
Dreams, mental illness, dreams, Freudian slips. I swear, I've committed so many Freudian slips. It's so bad. I hate them.
The first idea, the idea of unconscious motivation, involves rejecting the claim that you know what you're doing. So suppose you fall.
Wait, hold on.
Involves rejecting the claim that you know what you're doing. So suppose you fall in love with somebody, and you decide you want to marry them. And then somebody was asked to ask you why. And you'd say something like, well, I'm ready to get married at this stage in my life. I really love the person is smart and attractive. I want to have kids, whatever. And maybe this is true. But a Freudian might say that even if this is your honest answer, you're not lying to anybody else. Still, there are desires and motivations that govern your behavior that you may not be aware of. So, in fact, you might want to marry John because he reminds you of your father, or because you want to get back at somebody for betraying you. If somebody was to tell you this, you'd say, that's total nonsense. But that wouldn't be for a Freudian. The Freudian would say that these processes are unconscious. So, of course, you just don't know what's happening. So the radical idea here is you might not know why you do what you do.
Wait, are daddy issues like Freudian? I think so. That's very Freud.
This is something we accept for things like visual perception. We accept that you look around the world and you get sensations and you figure out there's a car, there's a tree, there's a person, and you're just unconscious of how this happens. But it's unpleasant and kind of frightening that this could happen, that this could apply to things like why you're now studying at Yale, why you feel the way you do towards your friends, towards your family. Now, the marriage case is extreme, but Freud gives a lot of...
The thing is, I feel like he's half right, There's always going to be unconscious motivations, but that doesn't mean you have no clue. I actually think the reasons that, the person listed in that hypothetical scenario of why you married somebody, those reasons probably do make up a large majority of why you chose to marry them. It's just I think he discounts a lot of the conscious mind. And I don't think that's right. At least consider them equal. You know, I don't know.
Simpler examples where this sort of unconscious motivation might play a role. So have you ever liked somebody or disliked them and not know why? Have you ever found yourself in a
It's
situation
every time I just like somebody, it's because of projection, like 100% of the time.
where you're doing something or you're arguing for something or making a decision for reasons that you can't fully articulate? Have you ever forgotten somebody's name at exactly the wrong time? Have you ever called it the wrong name in the throes of passion? This is all the Freudian unconscious. The idea is that we do these things. These things are explained in terms of cognitive systems that we're not aware of. Now, all of this will be fine if your unconscious was a reasonable, rational.
I wish psychologists didn't just take their theory. I think Jung probably does this as well, but I wish they didn't just take their theory and apply it to absolutely everything. It makes everything so black and white because I feel like at the end of the day it is probably a mixture of theories interacting in different ways, you know. So
If your unconscious is really smart and looking out for your best interest. But according to Freud, that's not the way it works. According to Freud, there are three distinct processes going on in your head. And these are in violent internal conflict. And the way you act and the way you think are products not of a singular rational being, but of a set of conflicting creatures. And these three parts are the id, the ego, and the superego. And they emerge developmentally. The id, according to Freud, is present at birth. It's the animal part of the self. It wants to eat, drink, pee, poop, get warm, and have sexual satisfaction. It is outrageously stupid. It works on what Freud called the pleasure principle. It wants pleasure, and it wants it now. And that's, according to Freud, how a human begins. Pure id. Freud had this wonderful phrase, polymorphous perversity. This pure desire for pleasure. Now, unfortunately, life doesn't work like that. What you want isn't always what you get. And this leads to a set of reactions to cope with the fact that pleasure isn't always there when you want it, either by planning how to satisfy your desires or planning how to suppress them. And this system is known as the ego, or the self. And it works on the reality principle. And it works on the principle of trying to figure out how to make your way through the world, how to satisfy your pleasures, or, in some cases, how to give up on them. And the ego, the emergence of the ego, for Freud, symbolizes the origin of consciousness. Finally, if this was all there was, it might be a simpler world. But Freud had a third component, that of the superego.
hold on. Origin of consciousness. After the video, we're gonna go through all of this and kind of like organize it on the side.
And the superego is the internalized rules of parents and society. So what happens in the course of development is you're just trying to make your way through the world and satisfy your desires, but sometimes you're punished for them. Some desires are inappropriate, some actions are wrong, and you're punished for it. The idea is that you come out, you get in your head a superego, a conscience. In these movies, it'd be like a little angel above your head that tells you when things are wrong. And basically yourself, the ego, is in between the id and the superego. One thing to realize, I told you the id is outrageously stupid. It just says, oh, hungry, food, sex, oh, let's get warm, oh. The superego is also stupid. The superego, according to Freud, is not some brilliant moral philosopher telling you about right and wrong. The superego is like, you should be ashamed of yourself. That's disgusting. Stop doing that. Oh. And in between these two screaming creatures, one of them telling you to seek out your desires, the other one telling you to be ashamed of yourself, is you, is the ego. Now, according to Freud, most of this is unconscious. So we see, bubbling up to the top, we feel, we experience ourselves.
That's kind of confusing. I don't know.
And the driving of the id, the forces of the id and the forces of the superego are unconscious, in that we cannot access them. We don't know. It's like the workings of our kidneys or our stomachs. You can't introspect and find them. Rather, they do their work without conscious knowledge. Now, Freud developed this. This is the Freudian theory in broad outline. He extended it and developed it into a theory of psychosexual development. And so Freud's theory is, as I said before, a theory of everyday life, of decisions, of errors, of falling in love, but it's also a theory of child development. So Freud believed there were 5 stages of personality development, and each is associated with a particular erogenous zone. And Freud believed as well that if you have a problem at a certain stage, if something goes wrong, you'll be stuck there. So according to Freud, there are people in this room who are what they are because they got stuck in the oral stage, in the anal stage. And that's not true. So the oral stage is when you start off. The mouth is associated with pleasure. Everything is sucking and chewing and so on.
What I don't... Okay, how is this actually connected to mental structures in your brain? Like,
the problem for Freud
hold
is
on.
premature weaning of a child, depriving him of the breast, could lead to serious. It is
What was it?
And that's not good.
Okay.
So the oral stage is when you start off. The mouth is associated with pleasure. Everything is sucking and chewing and so on. And the problem for Freud is premature weaning of a child, depriving him of the breast, could lead to serious problems in his personality development. It could make him, as the phrase goes, into an oral person. And his orality could be described literally. Freud uses as an explanation for why somebody might eat too much, or chew gum, or smoke. They're trying to achieve satisfaction through their mouth, of a sort they didn't get in this very early stage of development. But it can also be more abstract. If your roommate is dependent and needy, you could then go to your roommate and say, you're an oral person. The first year of your life did not go well. A phrase even more popular is...
So just if they're needy in general, needy and greed? Question mark? Needing. So insatiable. Insatiable. Okay.
is the anal stage, and that happens after the oral stage, and problems can emerge if toilet training is not handled correctly. If you have problems during those years of life, you could become an anal personality.
Okay, but like, what if you have like a problem? I don't think these need to go in order. Anyway.
According to Freud, and your roommate could say, your problem is you're too angry. And according to Freud, literally, it meant you were unwilling to part with your own feces. It's written down here, I know. And the way it manifests itself, as you know from just how people talk, is you're compulsive, you're clean, you're stingy. This is the anal personality. Then it gets a little bit more complicated. The next stage is the stop.
Okay. Compulsively stingy. All right.
Is not much more complicated. The focus of pleasure shifts to the genitals, and fixation can lead to excessive masculinity in females, or if in males, or if you're female, need for attention or domination. Now, at this point, something really interesting happens, called the Oedipus complex. Can lead to excessive masculinity in females, or if you're male, or if you're female, need for attention or domination. Now, at this point.
Wait, did he say males a need for? Okay, this needs to calm down. This is pretty kind of crazy. Did he say? So it's just an overexpression of masculinity in both genders?
Really interesting happens. Or if you're female, need for attention or domination. For masculinity in females, or if you're male, or if you're female, need for attention.
What? Okay, or in males, or if you're female, need for attention. What? Okay, hold on. Maybe he'll elaborate.
And fixation can lead to excessive masculinity in females, or if you're male, or if you're female, need for attention or domination. Now, at this point, something really interesting happens, called the Oedipus complex. And this is based on a story, the mythical story of a king who killed his father and married his mother. And according to Freud, this happens to all of us in this way. Well,
wait, he what? He killed his father and married his mother? Oh. Okay. Oedipus complex.
For Freud, this happens to all of us in this way. Well, all of us, by all of us, Freud meant men. So here's the idea.
That's crazy.
You're 3 or 4 years old. You're in the phallic stage. So what are you interested in? Well, you're interested in your penis. And then you seek an external object. Freud's sort of vague about this, but you seek some sort of satisfaction. But who's out there who'd be sweet and kind and loving and wonderful? Well, mom. So the child in first, mom is nice. Hello.
What if like your dad is nice? And then what happens? Are you just you're gay?
Mom.
I feel like Freud would say that. That's how homosexuality starts. Cause like if your dad is too feminine, then you become gay.
This is not crazy. What boy falling in love with mother? Problem. Dad's in love. Now this is going to get progressively weirder. But I want to say, as the father of two sons, both sons went through a phase where they explicitly said they wanted to marry mommy and me. If something bad happened to me, that would be the worst thing in the world. So there's this. But now. It gets a little bit aggressive.
Maybe that's just because the mother spends more time with your children. I don't think it's because of the. It's just the problem with these. I think they aren't true in all cases. Like I think Sure, because of gender roles, they're typically true, but
Here, the child determines that he's going to kill his father every 3 or 4 years old. But then, because children, according to Freud, don't have a good sense of the boundary between their mind and the world, which is a problem. The problem is they think their father can tell that they're plotting to kill him. And they figure their father is now angry at them. And then they ask themselves, what's the worst thing Dad could do to me? And the answer is castration. So they come to the conclusion.
I don't understand how that could be the conclusion. If you're driven by the pleasure principle at this age, the worst thing that could happen is he kills you and you're unable to feel pleasure? Wait. So Freud's reasoning for a 3-year-old, right, is that because they are driven by the pleasure principle and the genitalia is the pleasure zone, they want to keep that zone intact. And that's the worst thing a father can do to them, castrate them. That's kind of weird. I a 3-year-old. Okay. I I understand the reasoning. I think it's wrong, but whatever.
Their father is going to castrate them because of their illicit love for their mom. And then they say, Dad wins. And then they don't think about sex for several years. And that's the latency stage. The latency
But like biologically, okay.
stage is they've gone through this huge thing with Mom and Dad. Fell in love with Mom, wanted to kill my father. Dad was going to castrate me, fell out of love with Mom.
Stop.
Out of the sex business. And its sex is repressed until you get to the genital stage.
That's the word I
genital
was
stage is
looking
the
for.
stage we are all in, the healthy adult stage. Now that you're adult and you've gone through all the developmental stages, where do you stand? You're not out of the woods yet. Because unconscious mechanisms are still, even if you haven't got fixated or anything, there's still this dynamic going on.
Okay, I only had 3. Where did I go wrong? Phallic? Okay, okay. Hold on. One, two, three. What? Latent. You skipped the latent. Oh, it was probably on his like screen or whatever. Don't you love Claire de Lune? This is the first time I've understood the reasoning.
And the idea is, your superego, remember your superego is stupid. So your superego isn't only telling you not to do bad things, it's telling you not to think bad things. So what's happening is, your id is sending up all of this weird signal.
Superego is the cause for repression equals repression.
Stuff. All of these crazy sexual and violent desires. Oh, I'll kill him. I'll have sex with that. I'll have extra helpings on my dessert. And your superego is like, no. And this stuff is repressed. It doesn't even make it to consciousness. The problem is Freud had a very sort of hydraulic theory of what goes on.
Let me check if everything's okay with the stream. Yeah, it is. Okay.
And some of this stuff slips out. And it shows up in dreams, and it shows up in slips of the tongue, and in exceptional cases it shows up in certain clinical symptoms. So what happens is, Freud described a lot of normal life as in terms of different ways.
Let me actually... Is everybody okay? Strange. Okay.
keep that horrible stuff.
Hold on, I actually think the chat is like not. Here. There you go. Oh, is this YouTube? Okay, that's fine. That could be there.
Stuff in the ear, making its way to consciousness. And we call these defense mechanisms. You're defending yourself. Describe a lot of
Whoa.
normal life as in terms of different ways we use to keep that horrible stuff in the ear, making its way to consciousness. And we call these defense mechanisms. You're defending yourself against the horrible parts of yourself. And some of these make a little bit of sense. I mean, one way to describe this in a non-technical, non-Freudian way is there's certain things about ourselves we'd rather not know. There's certain desires we'd rather not know, and we have ways to hide them. So for instance, there's sublimation. Sublimation is you might have a lot of energy, maybe sexual energy or aggressive energy, but instead of turning it to a sexual or aggressive target, what you do is you focus it in some other way. So you can imagine a great artist like Picasso turning the sexual energy into his artwork. There's displacement. Displacement is you have certain shameful thoughts or desires, and you refocus them more appropriately. A boy who's bullied by his father may hate his father and want to hurt him. But since this is very shameful and difficult, the boy might instead kick the dog and think he hates the dog, because that's a more acceptable target.
Wait, but oh, okay.
There's projection. Projection is I have certain impulses I'm uncomfortable with. So rather than own them myself, I project them to somebody else. A classic
Okay,
example for Freud.
I think the reason he's so sexual focused, what I hypothesize, what I'm guessing, is that sex is what leads to life. It's like the greatest pleasure. So therefore everything should be centered around that. I just don't think that reasoning is true. Okay.
The idea is that I feel this tremendous lust towards you, for instance, and any of you, all of you three. And I'm ashamed of this lust. So what I say is, hey, are you guys looking at me in a sexual manner? Are you lusting after me? How disgusting. Because what I do is I take my own desire and I project it to others. And Freud suggested, perhaps not implausibly, that
Okay.
men who believe other men, who are obsessed with the sexuality of other men, are themselves projecting away their own sexual desires. There's rationalization.
Wait, so looks maxers are just gay?
And Freud suggested, perhaps not implausibly, that men who believe other men, who are obsessed with the sexuality of other men, are themselves projecting away their own sexual desires. There's rationalization, which is that when you do something or think something bad, you rationalize it and you give it a more socially acceptable explanation. A parent who enjoys smacking his child will typically not say, I enjoy smacking my child, rather will say, it's for the child's own good. I'm being a good parent by doing this. And finally, there is regression, which is...
Okay, I feel like there are many different types of projection then. Like, what could that last example be? Enjoyment of bad activities, rationalized. Okay.
Turning to an earlier stage of development. And you actually see this in children. Child will typically not say, I enjoy smacking my child, rather will say, it's for the child's own good. I'm being a good parent by doing this. And finally, there is regression, which is returning to an earlier stage of development. And you actually see this in children. In times of stress and trauma, they'll become younger. They will act younger. They might cry, they might suck their thumb, seek out a blanket, and so on. Now, these are all mechanisms that for Freud are not the slightest bit pathological. They're part of normal life. Normally, we do these things to keep an equilibrium among the different systems of the unconscious. But sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes things go awry. And what happens is, a phrase that's not currently used in psychology, but was popular during Freud's time, hysteria. Hysteria includes phenomena like hysterical blindness and hysterical deafness, which is when you cannot see and cannot hear, even though there's nothing physiologically wrong with you. Paralysis, trembling, panic attacks, gaps of memory, including amnesia, and so on. And the idea is that these are actually symptoms. These are symptoms of mechanisms going on to keep things unconscious. It's a common enough idea in movies. Often in movies what happens is somebody goes to an analyst, they have some horrible problem. They can't remember something. or they have some sort of blackouts and so on. And the analyst tells them something. And at one point, they get this insight. And they realize why they've gone to themselves, why they can't. And for
That I think has some validity.
Freud, this is what happened.
That is
Freud
just
originally
repression.
to get these memories out through hypnosis, but then moved to the mechanism of free association. And according to Freud's ideas, patients offer resistance to this, and then the idea that psychoanalysts is to get over the resistance and help patients get insight. The key notion of psychoanalysis is your problems are actually reflect deeper phenomena. You're hiding something from yourself. And once you know what's going on with deeper phenomena, your problems will go away.
Oh, so it's like if you're in toxic relationships, it's because your parents didn't love you enough when you were younger. And I think, like, to an extent, that's true, but I just think the focus should not be on, like, the unconscious,
I'm going to give you an example of a theory.
but rather, like, things that you actually can really focus on and implement and change. I don't
Now,
know.
this is not a Freudian analysis. We'll discuss later on in the course what a Freudian analysis is, but this is not a pure Freudian analysis. Freudian analysis versus lying on a couch does not see the therapist. The therapist is very non-directive. But I'm going to present this as an example here because it illustrates so many of the Freudian themes, particularly themes about dreams, the importance of dreams, about repression, and about hidden meaning. So this is from a television episode, and the character, some of you may have seen this, many of you will not have, the character is suffering from panic attacks. In particular, he has panic attacks when he sees, his first panic attack originated when he walked to a swimming pool and he saw a family of ducks fly away. And he had a panic attack. High heart pounding, sweating, flush, and then he passed out. And these panic attacks grew worse and worse until he saw a therapist who ended up prescribing him medication. And this is discussed as one of the meetings he had with the therapist. Freud's contributions extend beyond the study of individual psychology and individual
They took out the example for copyright reasons.
pathology. Freud had a lot to say about dreams and beyond the study of individual psychology and individual pathology. Freud
All right, let's go back and like review what we've learned. Okay, so he was a crazy guy. Anyway, existence of unconscious with unconscious. Let me move my mic. So his main contribution was the existence of the unconscious with unconscious dynamics and the belief that those lead to mental illness, dreams, and Freudian slips. Unconscious motivations, 3 processes. So essentially, okay, let's not talk about the sexual part yet. Ego reactionary. Let's see. Unconscious motivations, desires, and thoughts. Contrived via the id are repressed by the ego and superego, leading to mental illness, is a symptom of unconscious processing of events. Processing of events / repressed thoughts. Okay. So the repressed thoughts want to come out, and they come out via mental illness. I guess if they're not processed. It's just in what cases do they come out as mental illness? What did you do? You followed. Thank you. They come out as mental illness? I guess so. But in what cases? Because I swear, like some things just stay repressed for people's entire lives, and it results in things like toxic masculinity or femininity, and people just never process that, but it doesn't lead to mental illness. It just leads to hatred of other groups and judgments and lots of projection, you know? Okay, so what I'm hearing is these repressed thoughts, desires, etc., can lead to either coping mechanisms or mental illness. Repression leads to coping or mental illness. You know, I honestly think he's right on that regard. I will say. Very true, bro. High five to Freud. He did do a lot. Like I have to give him credit.
He believed that dreams had a manifest content, meaning what you experience in your dream. But dreams always had a latent content as well, meaning the hidden implication of the dream. He viewed all dreams as wish fulfillment. Every dream you have.
That's just not true, bro. Like, you don't understand my dreams. I have horrible dreams. You're telling me that's a wish? Like, I actually get so abused in my dreams, bro. Also, what about sleep paralysis? Is sleep paralysis wish fulfillment as well? Like, I just want to be like... Okay. Let's do dreams.
Certain wish you have, even though it might be a forbidden wish that you wouldn't wish to have, you want to have. And dreams had, and this is an idea long predated Freud, dreams had symbolism. Things like
I do fight people a lot in my dreams. Boom, 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 boom. I want to beat people up, I guess.
Were often not what they seemed to be, but rather symbols for other things. Freud believed that literature and fairy tales and stories to children and the like carried certain universal themes, certain aspects of unconscious structure.
Collective unconscious is Jung reference.
And certain preoccupations of our unconscious mind. And Freud had a lot to say about religion. For instance,
okay, I was just checking if the notes. Okay.
view a large part of our of the idea of finding a singular, all-powerful God as seeking out a father figure that some of us never had during development. What I want to spend the rest of the class on is the scientific assessment of Freud. So what I did was, so far, is I told you what Freud.
I don't understand the religious thing. Like, religion is an existential solution. Not... No, I think they just solve different problems in the psyche.
I then want to take the time to consider whether or not we should believe this and how well it fits with our modern science. But before doing so, I'll take questions for a few minutes. People have questions about Freud or Freud's theory. Yes. It's an excellent question. The question is that the conflicts in psychosexual development that Freud describes is always assumes that a child has a mother and a father, one of each in a certain sort of familial structure. And the question then is, what if a child was raised by a single parent, for example? What if a child was never breastfed, but fed from the bottle from the start? And Freudians have had problems with this. Freud was very focused on family life of the people he interacted with, which was rather upper-class European. And these sort of questions would have been difficult for Freud to answer.
That's what I'm saying.
What you have to say is you would expect systematic differences. So you would expect a child who just grew up with a mother, just grew up with a father to be in some sense psychologically damaged by that, failing to go through the normal psychosexual stages. Yes? The question is, do modern psychoanalysts still believe that women do not have super egos? Freud was, as you're pointing out, Freud was notorious for suggesting that women were morally immature.
Bro, why? I just found out today that Nietzsche was a little bit of a hater towards women. I don't know if he was technically a misogynist because I don't think he viewed women as below him, but he viewed them as like troublemakers for men, luring them away from being the Ubermensch. Not really. I read a Wikipedia article. I didn't really look into it, but
relative to men. I think Freud would say that women have super egos. They're just not the sort of sturdy ones that men have.
that's very confusing because I know that he did talk therapy with women. And so it's like if they don't have super egos, then what could be repressing?
I think psychoanalysts and psychoanalytic scholars right now would be mixed. Some would maintain that there really are deep sex differences. Others would want to jettison that aspect of Freud.
Dude.
Yes. Well,
Sublimation. Displacement. I don't know what that coping mechanism is. Focusing. Okay.
sublimation is, a lot of these, it's a good question. The question is what is sublimation? How does it relate to other defense mechanisms? A lot of defense mechanisms involve taking a desire and tuning it. Now what displacement does is it takes it from you to her. Like, I'm angry at you, but maybe that's forbidden for some reason, so I'll be angry at her. What projection does is takes the desire from me and then puts it on somebody else heading at this. And what sublimation does is it just gives up the details and keeps the energy. So you stay up, your roommate stays up all night working. And you say to your roommate, for instance, that's just because you haven't had sex in a long time. And you want to have sex because all your energy, your napping time. And then you say, that's sublimation. I learned that in the sex. And your roommate is very pleased. One more question.
So, okay, but he's making such strict claims. A plus B equals C. Perhaps this professor is like absolutely dragging Freud through the mud and misinterpreting him. Like, you have to at least know that, like, okay, that's not going to happen in all cases. You have to at least say that. No?
Yes. The question is, which is related to the issue, extending the issue of the two-parent versus one-parent, is to what extent are these notions validated cross-culturally? And that's such a good question. I'm going to talk about it in a few minutes. That speaks to the issue of the scientific assessment of Freud. So I'm going to try to get to your question in a little bit. Freudian theory is now, at this point in time, extremely controversial. And there's a lot of well-known criticisms and attacks on Freud. This is actually an excellent book on the memory work by Frederick Cruz, and Frederick Cruz is one of the strongest and most passionate critics of Freud. And the problems with Freud go like this. There are two ways you can reject the theory. There are two problems with the scientific theory. One way you can reject the theory is that it could be wrong. So suppose I have a theory that the reason why some children have autism, a profound developmental disorder, is because their mothers don't love them. This is a popular theory for many years. It's a possible theory, it just turns out to be wrong. But another way, and so one way to attack and address a scientific theory is to view it as just to see whether or not it works. But there's a different problem a theory could have. A theory could be so vague and all-encompassing that it can't even be tested. And this is one of the main critiques of Freud. The idea could be summed up by a quotation from the physicist Wolfgang Pauli. And Pauli was asked his opinion about another physicist. And Pauli said this: that guy's work is crap. He's not right. He's not even wrong. And the criticism about Freud is that he's not even wrong. The issue of vagueness is summarized in a more technical way by the philosopher Karl Popper, who introduced the term of falsifiability. The idea of falsifiability is that what distinguishes science from non-science is that scientific predictions make strong claims about the world, and these claims are of a sort that they could be proven wrong. If they couldn't be proven wrong, they're not interesting enough to be science. So for example, within psychology, the sort of claims we'll be entertaining throughout the course include claims like damage to the hippocampus causes failures of certain sorts of memory. Or everywhere in the world, men, on average, want to have more sexual partners than women. Or exposure to violent television tends to make children themselves more violent. Now, are they true or are they false? Well, we'll talk about that. But the point here is they can be false. They're interesting enough that they can be tested. And as such, they might be wrong, but they graduate to the level of a scientific theory.
I
This
see.
should be contrasted with non-scientific programs, and the best example of a non-scientific program is astrology. So the problem with astrological predictions is not that they're wrong, it's that they can't be wrong. They're not even wrong. I got my horoscope for today, on the web. A couple of negative aspects could make you a little finicky for the next few days. Okay, I'm going to watch for that. The presence of both Mars and Venus suggests you want to box everything into a neat, ordered, structured way, but keeping a piece of jade or carnelian close will help you keep in touch with your fun side. And starting this morning, I got to my wife a little piece of jade, and I have been sort of in touch with my fun side. The problem is, a few days aren't going to go by and say, God, that was wrong. It can't be wrong. It's just so vague. I got a better horoscope from the Onion, actually.
The Onion
Riding a
is
golf
crazy.
cart with snow cone in hand, he was tackled by two police officers this week after matching a composite character service with suspected murder. Now, that's a good prediction because wow, if it turns out to be true, I'm going to say those guys really know something. It's falsifiable. Arguably, Freud fails to test it because Freudian theory is often so vague and flexible that it can't really be tested in any reliable way. A big problem of this is a lot of Freudian theories claim to be validated in courts of psychoanalysis. So when you ask people, why do you believe in Freud? They won't say, oh, because of this experiment, this data set, and that data set. What they'll say is, it's Freud, the Freudian theory proves itself in the course of psychoanalysis, the success of psychoanalysis. But it's unreliable. I mean, the problem is, say, Freud says to a patient, you hate your mother. Freud says, wow, that makes sense. Freud says, I'm right. Freud says,
I know.
No, it's terrible, that's disgusting. Freud says, your anger shows us that it was painful for you to repress it, I am right.
Yes, exactly.
And the problem is, the same sort of dynamic plays itself out even in the scientific debate back and forth. So Freudian psychologists, I'm putting Freud here, but what I mean is well-known defenders of Freud, will make some claims like, adult personality traits are shaped by the course of psychosexual development, old genes are disguised risk illness,
Well, the question is, well, how would you... I guess, yeah. Okay, I was going to ask, how could you rationally measure the effects of the unconscious? That would be through actions and effects. No, because then you could just say, you're repressing it! You're repressing...
analysis of the best treatment for mental disorders. Scientists will respond, I disagree, there's really no evidence supporting those claims. And if Freudian response is, you reject them ideas, those are the discussion theory. This is because I am right. And this is often followed up, seriously enough, with deep psychological problems. And now I don't want to caricature Freudians. A lot of Freudians have tried and made a research program of extending their ideas scientifically, bringing them through a scientific test. But the problem is, when you make specific falsifiable predictions, they don't always do that well. So for instance, there's no evidence that oral and anal characteristics, the personality characteristics I talked about being needy versus being stingy, relate in any interesting way to weaning or toilet training.
That's what I'm saying.
To go back to the question Mr. asked before, looking at cross-cultural differences in toilet training and weaning, which are really big differences, to see if they correspond in any interesting way to personality differences, and there's been no good evidence supporting that. Similarly, Freud had some strong claims about sexuality, to why some people are straight and others are gay. These have met with very little empirical.
Hold on. No good evidence for personality traits / tendencies corresponding with oral / stages and cross-cultural.
And the claim that psychoanalysis proves itself by its tremendous success in curing mental illness is also almost certainly not true. For most, maybe not all, but for most psychological disorders, there are quicker and more reliable treatments than psychoanalysis. And there's considerable controversy as to whether the Tony Soprano method of insight, where you get this insight and this discovery, oh, now I know, makes any real difference in alleviating symptoms such as anxiety disorders or depression. Both by its tremendous success in claims about sexuality, for why some people are straight and others are gay, these have met with very little empirical support. And the claim that psychoanalysis proves itself.
He didn't explain what the claims were for homosexuality. I was actually curious, sir.
By its tremendous success in curing mental illness is also almost certainly not true. For most, maybe not all, but for most psychological disorders, there are quicker and more reliable treatments than psychoanalysis. And there's considerable controversy as to whether the Tony Soprano method of insight, where you get this insight and this discovery, oh, now I know, makes any real difference in alleviating symptoms such as anxiety disorders or depression. This is why there's often a sticker shock when people go to a university psychology department, where they say, look, hey, how do I take classes on Freud? Who's your expert on Freud? And the truth is, Freudian psychoanalysis is almost never studied inside psychology departments. Not the cognitive or developmental side, not the clinical side. There are some exceptions, But for the most part, even the people who do study Freud within psychology departments do so critically. Not very few of them see themselves as a psychoanalytic practitioner or as a Freudian psychologist. Freud lives on, both in a clinical setting and in a university. But Freud at Yale, for instance, is much more likely to be found in the history department or the literature department than in the psychology department. And this is typical enough. But despite all of the sort of sour things I just said about Freud, the big idea, the importance of the dynamic unconscious remains intact. We will go over and over and over again, different case studies, with some really interesting aspects of mental life.
I feel like if Freud didn't exist and Jung just existed, you know, he would have carried psychology so much more than Freud did.
To the unconscious. Now, there's one question, I'm not going to skip over this for reasons of time, and just go to some examples of the unconscious in modern psychology. So, here's a simple example of the unconscious in modern psychology. Language understanding. So when you hear a sentence like, John thinks that Bill likes him, in a fraction of a second, you realize that this means that John thinks that Bill likes John. If you heard the sentence, John thinks that Bill likes himself, in a fraction of a second, you would think that it means John thinks that Bill likes Bill. And as we will get to when we get to lecture and language, this is not conscious. You don't know how you do this. You don't even know you are doing this, but you do it quickly and instinctively. So much of our day-to-day life can be done unconsciously. There are different activities you can do. Driving, chewing gum, shoelace tying, where if you're good enough at them, if you're expert enough at them, you don't know you're doing it. I was at a party a few years ago with a friend of mine, and we ran out of food. So he said, I'll just go pick up some food. An hour later, he was gone. Still gone, and he was sitting around the corner. And we called him up on his cell phone. And he said, oh, I got on the highway and I drove to work. You know, he works like an hour away. They got on the highway.
You're lying, bro. Stop the cap.
And some versions of these things happen all the time. Maybe more surprising. Freud
That's not even true, because I've done that in other ways.
insight that our likes and dislikes are due to factors that we're not necessarily conscious of, has a lot of empirical support from research into social psychology, for example. So here's one finding from social psychology. If somebody goes through a terrible initiation to get into a club, they'll like the club more. You might think they'd like it less because people do terrible things, but actually hazing is illegal, but a remarkably successful tool. The more you pay for something, the more you like it, and the more pain you go through to get something, the more you like it. From the standpoint of politics, for instance, if you want loyal people in a political campaign, do not pay them. If you pay them, they'll like you less. If they volunteer, they'll like you more. And we'll talk about why. There's different theories about why. But my point right now is simply that people don't necessarily know this, but still, they're subject to this. Another example.
I guess because it relates to, like, submission, and they like you more. If somebody if that's true, then women wouldn't want men to pay for them on dates. I don't understand that. Why is that true? That's weird.
In a discipline of social psychology known as terror management, which involves subliminal death crimes. The idea of subliminal death crimes is that you sign up for your human subject requirement, and then they put you in front of a computer screen, and then they tell you, oh, just sit in front of a computer screen and we'll ask you some questions. And then the questions come out, and they're questions like, how much do you love your country? What do you think of Asians? What do you think of Jews? What do you think of blacks? What do you think of vegetarians? What do you think of people's political views? Different things. Here's the gimmick. What you don't know is, on that computer screen, words are being flashed. Like that. But they're being flashed so fast it looks like death. You don't see anything. Words like corpse, dead, dying. The flashing of these subliminal words, subliminal meaning a fantasy term meaning below the level of consciousness, you don't know you're seeing them, has dramatic effects on how you answer those questions. People exposed to death crimes become more nationalistic, more patriotic, less forgiving of other people, less liking of other races and people from other countries. Again, the explanation for why this is so is something that we'll get to.
This is social media.
The point now is simply to illustrate that these sort of things that things you aren't aware of can have an effect on how you think. The final
Thank you, Freud.
example I'll give you this is a short demonstration. To do this, I'm going to cut the class in half at this point. So you'll be on this side of the class, the right side, my right, and this will be on the left side. And I simply want everybody to think about somebody you love. So think about somebody you love, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your mom, your dad. Think about somebody you love. Now, on this screen is going to be instructions, but I want to give the instructions for this half of the class. I'm going to ask everybody in this half class, please either turn your head or shut your eyes.
We are not going to be able to see the screen.
You don't instructions, follow the instructions. You can go think. So, and it shows that you don't know this. Subjects who were asked to do 10 positive features and then later rank the person lower, and then ask, what
Hold on, this is actually important.
task obey? Now, on the screen is going to be instructions, but I want to give them instructions for this half of the class. I'm going to ask everybody in this half of the class, please either turn your head or shut your eyes. Okay? Teaching fellows too. And everybody in this half obey. Okay, everybody read that?
Oh,
Okay. Now, turn your head, this group.
okay.
Particularly, for instance, the study of racial and sexual prejudice, where one of the big findings in social psychology, and we'll devote almost an entire lecture to this, is that people have strong views about other races that they don't know about, and that they don't know control their actions. So to some extent,
Oh, unconscious racial.
The particulars of Freud are, for the most part, have been rejected. But the general idea of Freud has actually been so successful, both in the study of scientific psychology and in our interpretation of everyday life, that to some extent Freud's been a victim of his own success. We tend to underestimate the importance of Freudian thought in everyday life because he's transformed our worldview to such an extent that it's difficult for us to remember it with any other way to think about it. So to some extent, he's been a victim of his own success. We have time for some further questions about Freud and about scientific.
A victim of his own success. Alright, we're gonna skip these. Let's do another summary. Oedipus complex. Oedipus complex. Okay, let's do the psychosexual freaking theory. Okay. Moving the mic. Psychosexual. Freud's psychosexual developmental theory. Is based, actually, this is my opinion. I was going to say it's based on the fact that the result of okay, but I thought the reason he focused so much on sex was because it's the greatest desire to reproduce, but also just the greatest pleasure in human animals. That's what I'm guessing. And so well, that's what I'm gonna say. Also, the music stopped. Okay. Psychosexual development theory is based on, I'm just gonna say that's opinion, the fact that sex is the highest desire, reproduction. People just say this evolutionarily, like I'm not saying mentally it's the highest desire for everybody. The highest desire and pleasure. And so repression results from the stages. I mean, surely he must have considered social influence as well, like just social taboos and social influence. I just think a lot of these specifics are not important. This was not proven correct. This was not proven correct. Excessive masculinity, I mean, honestly, that's all I'm gonna put. Defense mechanisms. We already talked about that in the last one. Dreams. Unconscious in modern psychology. I believe... Didn't he come up with... Freud's view... Oh my god, I can't say... View on depression. I'm pretty sure he did make advances on what depression was. Like, it was a projection of hatred on the self, or something like that. How depression shapes... A mood disorder. Psychodynamic. Inwardly directed anger. That's what I was looking for. Inwardly directed anger equals depression. Essentially, it's like, because you're so frustrated with your circumstances, your anger is redirected almost as like a coping mechanism to feel like you have control to yourself. And I think that's accurate. Just intuitively, I mean, it makes sense. Equals depression. So it's like desire for control. Of external circumstances. What happened? Did you follow? Thank you. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you so much. Desire for control of external circumstances. Better control leads to externalized anger being internalized, if that makes sense. And introjection of love object loss. I have never heard the word introjection in my life. What? Introjection is the unconscious adoption of the thoughts, memories, or personality traits of others. I do this a lot. Like, 100%. I do this very efficiently. If that makes sense. If I, like, hang out with a certain group of people a lot, or I consume a certain type of media a lot, I don't know why I'm so susceptible for this. Maybe it's, like, genetic or something, but... Anyway... love object loss. I don't know. I don't think it's that. Severe superego demands. Excessive narcissistic. Okay. Loss of self-esteem. Alright, I think the depression one was just probably the best. Are we doing okay? I'm gonna read. So this is basically learning about how the mind stores information and the neural pathways that make up your past experiences and association. Yes, that is what he said the foundation's for. That's what I like about Freud. That's what most people like about him. And then he just added a bunch of stuff that, like, is kind of weird and doesn't make sense. I think B is rage baiting by keep the video volume. The video volume was low? Oh my gosh. I didn't know that. Anyway. Oh. People with deep depression activate a dormant part in their mind, which essentially makes them highly smarter. By having bouts of depression, it's similar to reflecting and fixing. Oh wait, I didn't read your first message. If you think you're going crazy, be sure first you're not surrounded by a-holes. Okay. That's pretty true, though. I think he's on to something, like, a lot of the time. And then it takes a weird turn. Like, okay, people with deep depression activate a dormant part in their mind, which essentially makes them highly smarter by having bouts of depression. Reflecting and fixing. Yes, I do think that his view that depression is sort of like a coping mechanism is very true. It sounds backwards, but you're right. It it makes them by smart, do you mean like efficient? Efficient in mentally processing? Because hating the world makes you feel so out of control that it's unstable. And so as a result, you hate yourself instead. And you internalize the anger, and that is what turns into depression. And in a way that's smart, you know? I would call it more so efficient. The song lyrics from Only Happy When It Rains by Garbage, she's singing, I'm running high off of deep depression. I love that song. Oh my god. I've never heard it. My bad. Anyway. Is there anything here? No. Okay. We have. How long have I been streaming? Only an hour? That's pretty good. I have psychoanalytic theory of Sigmund Freud. Interpretation of dreams. Or I have Sigmund Freud. Yeah, we're gonna do psychoanalytic theory. Now let me fix this screen, of course. I think it's gonna be like right there. And then right there. Yes, it is Jungian. I know I'm saying it wrong. Somebody corrected me already. I am very used to saying Jung. Is that good? Can you see everything? I think you can see most of it, but not all of it. Let me see. Actually, I'm not going to be able to view it there. Okay, it's fine. I think it's good enough, I'm not going to lie. Okay. Now... psychoanalytic theory. Article. Why did... I'm actually gonna go to the restroom, guys. I'll be right back, okay? Actually, I'll leave it there. can you hear the music? Well, I gotta know because I just learned that literally everybody couldn't hear the freaking video. I mean, you can, it's barely audible to me as well. Okay. What kind of bird do I have? A Canor. I almost forgot the name. They aren't technically my birds. They're more so my sister's. What is up? Okay. Psychoanalytic theory of Freud. I don't know why I capitalized that. Freud, still beholden to Charcot's hypnotic method. Well, I don't know who this is. Still did not grasp the full implications of Breuer's experience until a decade later. Who are these people when he developed the technique of free association? Oh? I thought it was gonna lead to... What? What happened to my article? Is Britannica isn't like free anymore? No. I'm actually gonna cry. Britannica. Me and you go way back. Here we go. In part, an extrapolation of the automatic writing promoted. There is a lot of here. At first, however, Freud was uncertain about the precise static. His patients seemed to recall actual experiences. Yeah, I feel like I'm missing a lot of context, Britannica. Freud came to the conclusion. Where do I start? I just got a Domino's notification. Why do I have notifications on for Domino's? Maybe Sigmund Freud. I actually trusted Britannica with my life, and I didn't even check if the source was good. Freud still did not. Should we just use good old Wikipedia? Good old Wikipedia. Britannica, you made me do this. Okay, we're using Wikipedia. I'm sorry. This section does not cite any sources. Okay, well, it's just the id. So, we just went over this with the video, but honestly, let's read it anyway, because I think the professor did not go over details. So, there are 3 parts of a human psyche, according to Freud. The id is the part of the unconscious that seeks pleasure. His idea of the id explains why people act out in certain ways when it is not in line with the ego or superego. The id is the part of the mind which holds all of humankind's most basic and primal instincts. It is the impulsive unconscious part of the mind that is based on the desire to seek immediate satisfaction. The id does not have any grasp on any form of reality or consequence. Freud understood that some people are controlled by the id because it makes people engage in need-satisfying behavior without any regard for what is wrong. what causes this. Freud compared the id and the ego to a horse and a rider. The id is compared to the horse, which is directed and controlled by the ego, the rider. The example goes to show that although the id is supposed to be controlled by the ego, they often interact with one another according to the drives of the ego. The id is made up of two biological instincts, eros, which is the drive to create, and thanatos, which is the drive to destroy. The drive to create as in procreate, I guess. Drive to destroy? How did he come up with this? Did he just like pull it out of thin air, or did... Yeah, but what causes this? Anyway, I don't think we're at that part yet. The ego. In order for people to maintain a realistic sense here on Earth, the ego is responsible for creating a balance between pleasure and pain. It is impossible for all desires of the id to be met, and the ego realizes this but continues to seek pleasure and satisfaction. Although the ego does not know the difference between right and wrong, it is aware that not all drives can be met at a given time. The reality principle is what the ego operates to help satisfy the id's demands while also compromising with the constraints of reality. Okay? Okay, the ego is a person's self composed of unconscious desires. The ego takes into account unethical and cultural ideals in order to balance out the desires originating in the id. I thought that was the super ego. It takes into ethical and cultural ideal. I thought the ego was the rational operating system. Now I'm questioning if the ego is... My sister texted me. What? Did I just get offered a job? What? Did I just get offered a job? I thought that was my sister. I run a local marketing firm. We've been working with your friend, somebody I haven't talked to in 4 years, and asked if he knew anyone who may be a good fit. Since we're filling some part-time full positions, can work fully remotely too. He wasn't sure if you were looking for work, but I wanted to reach out. $20 per appointment starting pay. What? Is this a scam, bro? Honestly, the number seems legit. What if somebody's pranking me? Bro, I wasn't even friends with that guy. What in the yap? I'm very confused. Oh, is it sales? Oh, I hate sales. I'm okay, though. I don't know. The reality principle is what the ego operates. Anyway. The ego is a person's self composed of unconscious desires. The ego takes into account... I hate Wikipedia. No, I don't. I actually really like Wikipedia. What if I just go down to the sources? What do dreams mean? What is a Freudian slip? Defense mechanisms. There's like almost no sources. Understanding the id, ego, and super ego for dummies. Okay. You know, I think Wikipedia is great for an overview, but we just had the overview. Are we for serious? Wait, please don't show my credit card information by accident. Okay. Freud's father, Jacob, was a Jewish wool merchant who had been married once. Okay. Psychoanalytic theory. Okay, I'm just gonna read this one with and stay confused. Screen memories. Are we okay? Feels a little scammy. No, it does. Freud, still beholden. At first, Freud was uncertain about the precise status of the sexual component in this dynamic conception of the psyche. His patients seemed to recall actual experiences of early seductions, often incestuous in nature. Okay, what do you mean, like, they recalled them? Freud's initial impulse was to accept these as having happened, but then, as he disclosed in a now famous letter to Flies of September 2nd, he concluded that rather than being memories of actual events, these shocking recollections were the residues of infantile impulses and desires to be seduced by an adult. What was recalled was not a genuine memory, but he would later call a screen memory or a fantasy, hiding a primitive wish. That is, rather than stressing the corruptive initiative of adults in the etiology of neuroses, Freud concluded that the fantasies and yearnings of the child were at the root of later conflict. In 1904, Freud published in which he explored such seemingly insignificant errors as slips of the tongue or pen misreadings. Tongues or pen misreadings or forgetting of names. These errors Freud understood to have symptomatic and thus interpretable importance, but unlike dreams, they need not betray a repressed infantile wish, yet can arise from more immediate hostile, jealous, or egoistic causes. Thank you for following. In 1905, Freud extended the scope of this analysis by invoking the idea of joke work as a process comparable to dream work. He also acknowledged the double-sided quality of jokes, at once consciously contrived and unconsciously revealing. Okay, let's get serious, Freud. Damn! This is the longest section! Toward a general theory of Sigmund Freud. If the troubled history of its institutionalization served to call... You know what, Freud. Nobody studies you now. Okay? You had your time in the spotlight. And I honestly think that the lecture was enough of spotlight. Let's make a summary of what we learned today. So, oh, I forgot the camera was there. Okay. Unconscious motivations, desires, and thoughts contrived via the id are repressed by the ego and superego, leading to mental illness. Mental illness is a symptom of unconscious processing of events / repressed thoughts. I said the same thing twice. Repression leads to coping or mental illness. Psychosexual development theory is based on the fact. I actually think that's what it was explaining, and I think it said I was wrong. Actually, my patients told me that they wanted to, kiss their mom. And so that means that they, had sexual desire towards them. And definitely not that it was just, a social norm. Actual experiences of early seductions. Infantile impulses. So then how do pedophiles come about then? Freud! If the whole thing is wanting to be seduced by an adult, I guess it's a different mental structure. I have no idea. I just don't think, I'm trying to find validity in this like psychosexual development thing, but there's just like, there's nothing. Like he said in the lecture, a lot of this stuff is just infalsifiable. A lot of it is just, my patients told me that actually it is true that summary. Okay, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Freud developed the idea of unconscious desires, thoughts, and what was the third one? Motivations. I feel like that's a desire, but I'm gonna put it anyway because I can't find a third word. Develop the idea of unconscious desires, thoughts, and motivations, influencing behavior, and seeing behavior without the patient's knowledge. Did he not study trauma? I feel like he must have. Come on, Freud. He was just too focused. Freudian trauma, PubMed. Wait, a central concept in his first works. He must have, come on. Name then book. Name then book. Department of English. What even? Oh, is this like a? I don't even know. Freud and the scene of. You know, why doesn't Britannica talk about his work on trauma and the unconscious effects it has on the psyche for years to come? Freud, the trauma of Freud. Shopping. Oh goodness. This book is too silly. That's fine. Freud developed the idea of unconscious desires, thoughts, and motivations influencing behavior without the patient's knowledge. This can be seen today in analyzing childhood traumas, to dismantle negative patterns of behavior and mental structures. Like negative mental structure patterns, if that makes sense. Because if you remember, the guiding question was, how are Freud's theories used today and what effects does the unconscious processing have on the psyche? He theorized the id, with its primal desires, is constantly, I don't know if constantly the best word, repressed by the ego and superego, resulting in either coping mechanisms or what's it called? Mental illness. For example, depression being, what's the phrase? An inwardly directed anger. Inwardly directed anger of external circumstances. Coping from lack of control. And coping mechanisms. Other coping mechanisms include the three. Sublimation, projection, and regression. I was going to say something else. Oh, his critiques. Oh, but also, these can now be analyzed and connected to unconscious, repressed, I'm just gonna say mental structures because it's super vague and it encompasses everything. Finally, modern critiques, modern critiques mainly cite falsifiability, lack of falsifiability. Okay, I'm satisfied with that summary. Freud developed the idea of unconscious desires, thoughts, and motivations influencing behavior without the patient's knowledge. This can be seen today in analyzing childhood traumas to dismantle negative patterns of behavior and mental structures. He theorized the id, with its primal desires, is constantly repressed by the ego and superego, resulting in either coping mechanisms or mental illness. For example, depression being inwardly directed anger of external circumstances, coping from lack of control. Other coping mechanisms include sublimation, regression, and projection. These can now be analyzed and connected to unconscious repressed mental structures. Modern critiques mainly cite lack of falsifiability toward his psychosexual stages. Development. What good work we've done here today, my friends. Now, perhaps I can put this in a Notion doc. Oh, a new version of Notion is available. But yeah. My face. My face! Okay. Also important to note selection bias. You have to use your most messed up patients to make bold claims. That is very true, actually. Not actually representative of the everyman. Download for a browser so you can evade the... I'm a junior in college studying psychology right now. Freud was interesting to say the least. Oh yes, he's a very fun character to look at. But why? Why was the focus there? Of all places. Okay, don't they say victims of abuse go on to perpetuate the abuse to new victims? Yes, exactly. That would be a result of unconscious mental structures because that has been considered a norm in their minds. It's also if your parents were abusing you when you were young, you are more likely to believe that that's normal in friendships, in relationships. You're more likely to tolerate abuse because that's what you're used to. And sometimes you actually desire the abuse because that's what's familiar to you and you aren't used to positive treatment, and so that makes you uncomfortable unconsciously, and that's how patterns repeat. Yes. Go on to perpetuate the abuse to new victims. I've also heard of that happening. I think that may be just would it be projection? I do believe that's the result of a coping mechanism in some way. Or maybe it's just the normalization of the abuse in your mind. And so you go on to project it as oh, this is right. Maybe if somebody was abused when they were younger, they unknowingly internalized the idea that they deserved the abuse. And so if they do go on and perpetrate that abuse to future victims, it's because they believe the victims actually deserved the abuse because when they were younger, they believed they deserved the abuse. That makes sense. I think Freud was the repressed one and was projecting onto his patients. No, that's actually quite true. I think Freud was... Jung had his opinions. They famously didn't get on with each other. Yes, I know that they famously didn't get along with each other. However, in his books that I've read so far from Jung, he always gives credit where credit is due to Freud. He says, this is similar to Freud, but not weird. For example, I was reading Man and His Symbols by Carl Jung, and he does reference Freud. He's like, Freud was onto something with his interpretation of dreams, but the interpretations, the symbols that he was referencing being so concrete was where he lost the plot. And he was like, symbols are not to be so concretely defined. In fact, I think interpretation of dreams should be continuously built upon, because the psyche is continuously changing. And that's why, I mean, I like Jung more than Freud. I think most people do. I think terms of service would prohibit this, but one of the biggest indicators that a person will abuse children is either low impulse control of childhood abuse. Well, biggest indicators that a person will abuse children is either low impulse control of childhood abuse. Oh my gosh. Okay, that's very sad. I can see how that like makes sense, but oh my god. But yeah. Before Freud, I'm not sure if there was a concept of the unconscious so formally defined. And in that way, he was instrumental to psychology. Was there a concept of the unconscious for Freud? I bet you this is not gonna give me any freaking answer. The unconscious mind, although these processes exist... The term was coined... Oh. I saw Frederick... Hold on. The term was coined by the 18th century German romantic philosopher Friedrich Schelling. Friedrich Schelling? Who is this guy? He's German too? Okay, you're telling me there was 2 German philosophers in the same century. Thank you for subscribing. Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph Schelling. Oh my lord. Actually, this guy was before Nietzsche. Wait, this guy's a hold on, I need to share my screen. Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph Schelling. Okay. What? Because I was looking right here. This is like huge, hold on. You have an A-push test? Bro, that was one of the lowest tests I scored on because I took it my senior year. The term was and later introduced into English. No, I swear to God, it's probably like very frequently mentioned in Buddhist literature. I swear, the Buddhists were like way ahead of their time. Unconscious mind in Buddhism. MIT Press Reader. Okay, but this guy is like... it's so hard to find good sources on Buddhism. I don't know what this is. Anyway. But yeah. Gang, not gonna lie. I need this snow. Oh, like so that the school closes down. Okay. Dude. A-push. I didn't like that class very much. AP US History? Oh, wait, no. I confused it. I was thinking of AP European History. I did actually really well on my A-push test. Never mind. I actually really like that class. Never mind. Just watch Hamilton. Just watch Hamilton. You'll be fine. Is DuckDuckGo the strategy? Actually, it's not. Please don't download DuckDuckGo. Download Firefox instead, because DuckDuckGo doesn't have this one Chrome extension that I like called Hooked, but I'm too lazy to switch over. this Chrome extension called Hooked, you can turn off shorts on YouTube. You could also turn off your homepage if you want. You could turn off a bunch of stuff that makes YouTube distracting. And I love that. You have to remember Asian philosophy wasn't taken seriously by the West. My goodness. That's so nationalistic. You can, not nationalistic, xenophobic, that's what I meant. You can find Middle Eastern scholars talking about stuff the West was centuries beforehand, that's what I'm saying. Do I believe in reincarnation? I wish I believed in reincarnation. Like, I think that's probably the greatest theory. Like, it's the one I like the most. I love the idea of reincarnation. And also it has parallels with, like, how energy is transferred, and I think that's really cool. Hooked is actually What are you talking about? Guys, I don't understand phrases, like, ever, okay? The East never had a dark age because by a religious party. Ooh. Exactly. That's what I'm saying, though. I saw Iron Lung by Markiplier himself. Oh my god. Does anybody watch Markiplier? Cause I've been a fan of him since middle school and I loved it. Okay, just because it was Markiplier. If the movie was bad, I still would have loved it. But it was actually good. I did have to search up the lore afterwards because it was kind of confusing. Because I was like, okay, well, what's going on? You had to infer a lot of things and kind of connect the dots. And I didn't very well. So I had to, like, search up the lore after. But yeah. Ball knowledge equals niche reference. That's relatable. Is it because of... I don't have Digital Minimalism, the book. Yeah, Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. Didn't he make a movie? Yes! Markiplier made a movie. It's called Iron Lung. Go watch it. I feel like that's how movies should be made. I hate thrillers. And it's a thriller. But I thought it was really freaking good. Okay? I hate thrillers so much, especially books. Like, I think it was 3 Angry Men that I read, or no, that's another one. I don't know. I read some book. It was a thriller. I read like 20 pages and I was like, this is so bad. I don't care. And then I never read it. And then from that point on, I was like, I hate thrillers. But, yeah. Is Markiplier gonna beat Finette? Okay, Thriller by Michael Jackson is fire. Objectively. Okay, only other exception. Iron Lung, isn't Iron Lung also a game? Yes, it is. The movie is very, 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 very similar to the game. It follows all the same lore, all the same logic. I think they did like slight changes, but it was just to like help people understand the plot better. I believe in reincarnation now. Scientists recently have found a series of organisms that exist between life and death. I'm not even a religious person, but it's starting to become realistic. If there was any religion I chose, it'd be Buddhism. I don't know if that's like possible for me to become a Buddhist, but it'd be great. I'm not... Series of organisms... What? Wait, this is crazy. Hold on. Cells come alive after death. In this third state, certain cells, when given nutrients, oxygen, bioelectricity, or biochemical signals, have the capacity to transform into new multicellular organisms. Oh my gosh! Wait! Why is this crazy? What? Okay, this is a random article. The researchers reviewed recent studies showing the incredible capability of cells to reorganize and take on new forms. What? Skin cells become xenobots. In 2021, U.S. scientists found that skin cells from dead frogs could adapt to a lab environment, and spontaneously form multicellular organisms, actual living machines called xenobots. Oh my god. While most machines are constructed from materials like steel and plastic, which can degrade or break over time and have harmful side effects, living systems made from self-renewing and biocompatible materials would avoid these negative. Oh my goodness. Wait. Oh. They also proved adept at material collection, information recording, self-healing, and limited replication. Oh my god. Wait, this is actually crazy. I'm gonna put this link in the chat if you want to read it. What? Wait, let me read this. Yo, what? No, literally, yo, what? Look up Xenobots. Yes. We are reincarnated until we complete samsara. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. No, but I like life. Hello? Why do I need to... I know I just said if I had to pick any religion, I would pick Buddhism. But why do I need to strive towards samsara? Come on. Like, I mean... From what I understand, samsara is the highest level of detachment you can have. I don't want that. I want to be attached to life. I love life. I love it. I would love to be an ant. I would love to be a plant. You know? So, do you like science fiction? Have you ever seen the show Doctor Who? I have not. I know it's really popular, but no. I have actually watched BoJack Horseman for like the millionth time in a row. Kind of based apex predator behavior. Okay. The tech for synthetic androids is getting too real. Did y'all see the anatomically correct skin-covered robot? Hold on. Oh my god. Oh my... Dude, that makes me want to throw up. Oh, that's so gross. Oh, that's so gross. Oh, that's so gross. What even?
Yeah.
Bro. That's gross. Don't even. That's so weird. Guys, if we all die from robots, it's okay. Because then we'll just turn into xenobots. Guys. You know, I'm a computer science gal. I got into it in high school. I actually did most of my research on AI. Every project I could do on computer science, I did it on AI. I am an OG AI lover, making little LLMs and uh, image recognition. My senior project, I believe, was like live emotion recognition. So it combined like my interest in computer science and then psychology. It was really cool. But what in the yap is this? Like, why do we need to make them anatomically correct? That's just asking for them to be humanized. Asking. I don't... Like, obviously you see that. Hello? I don't understand sometimes. They developed artificial wounds in China. That's actually kind of cool, though. I don't want to give birth. Wait. Hold on. First pregnancy. This AI image is crazy. Okay. I mean, to be honest, I'm not really against this. As long as it, like, doesn't hurt the child, obviously. A Chinese tech firm is racing to deliver what... What? Debut today? Yes, this year? What? Only $13,000? That is so much less than a surrogate. Oh. Oh my god. Okay, please. Oh, how are they gonna test it? Okay, how are they gonna test it? Are they just gonna, like, put a baby in there? Oh my god. Like, you're the test subject. Okay. That's kind of unethical. Wait, why would you... if it's... Okay, if it works in laboratory settings, you don't gotta make it a robot. If somebody wants an alternative... If somebody wants an alternative to pregnancy, you don't gotta make it into a robot. Oh my lord. Oh yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be replacing the mother. It's China, there's no such thing as human rights. That's so funny. Okay. I'm gonna go now. It's been 2 hours. Are you aware of the discourse discussions around surrogacy being unethical, saying that rich people prey on poor women by paying them to be incubators and disregard the potential negative symptoms of pregnancy? I think it would be unethical if the surrogate didn't have a choice. You know, I have not looked into that. However, it's voluntary. Like, the surrogate has agency. Like, I feel like the view that it's unethical kind of puts down the surrogate, saying, like, they don't have agency, or implying that they don't have agency, they don't have rational reasoning systems, you know? This person would have... A lot of people argue it's coerced. I don't think so. Like, this person would probably have all sorts of issues due to how complicated the nature aspect of pregnancy is. The surrogate? Or the baby in the robot? That's what I think. I think the baby in the robot would not develop well. This is crazy. Anyway, bye.